name's Jez, and this is the third in the series of videos in which I talk about how to play rock and roll on the ukulele. In the first two videos I described some techniques for playing rock and roll on the uke in the key of G, which is a great key for rock and roll on the ukulele. C is also a great key, and that's what I'm going to talk about in this video. But before you watch and have a go at some of the techniques in this video, it's probably best that you work through the first two videos, because I'll be referring to some of the techniques that are in those videos in this video. Okay, so that was Shake, Rattle and Roll, which was a big hit for Bill Haley back in the 1950s, and before that it was a hit for Big Joe Turner. Bill Haley cleaned up the lyrics a little bit from Joe Turner's slightly saucy ones. I played a standard 12-bar blues chord progression, and as I mentioned before, lots of great rock and roll songs use a 12-bar blues chord progression, and there are variations in this chord progression, but this is a fairly standard one I'll describe now. Okay, so you start off by playing 4 bars of C, or you could play 3 bars of C and 1 of C7. Then you go to the F for 2 bars, back to the C for 2 bars, 1 bar of G or G7, 1 bar of F, 2 bars of C. Or you could play 1 bar of C and 1 bar of G7. And that's the turnaround that I described in the first video that sort of indicates that the chord progression is about to start all over again. Okay, so let's play through that chord progression. I'll give you a counting and you can play along with me a few times around. Here we go. Use a standard sort of train rhythm like we did before. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. The C7 to the F, back to the C, G7, F, C again. Stay there. Here we go again. C, C7, up to F, back to C. Let's just do a G this time. F, C, and again. Back to the C and stay on the C for the end. Okay, so that's a fairly standard 12-bar blues in the key of C. Now, you may have noticed that when I started off that song, I played a chord that you may not recognise. Now that's a kind of C chord. What I'm doing is, if you think of it in these terms, play a B flat, lift your third finger up, then slide it up 2 frets, and that's the C inversion. You can leave the 4th string, the G, open because that's part of the C chord. Now, like we did in the first video, when you did a slide up for the G chord riff, you can now slide up to the C for a chord riff, like that. You do it in the same place. You slide up to the first beat in the bar and you don't actually hit the strings on that first beat. So I'm playing the 6th note by putting my 3rd finger on the 5th fret on the 2nd string. So what I did at the beginning of the song is I played that for a couple of bars I think, and then went down to the more standard C chord riff that we looked at in the second video. So the intro went like this. Well, get out and that, and so on. Okay, so that's the beginning of the song. For the first 4 bars of the song you can play the standard C riff that we looked at before. So that was a C, adding a 6th note with your 2nd finger on the 2nd fret of the 4th string, you could also add a suspended fourth by putting your first finger on the first fret of the second string. So you're adding notes like this. And playing it with this rhythm. And you can also add the seventh note like this. Now what I was doing when I was singing that song, as I was going up to the seventh note, between the lines of the song it seems to sort of work like a little bit of a fill. Makes the song sound a little bit more interesting. So I did this. Well, get out in that kitchen and rattle those pots and pans. Yeah, get out. And then I went up to the F. You see, it just makes it a little more interesting in the gap there. I think on the record there's probably a bit of a brass motif. Then we go to the F, okay? Now we haven't done a chord riff in F yet. So, as before, you play a standard F major chord, and you add a sixth note. That is there. So you put your third finger on the second fret of the third string. Now, you may look at that and think, well, that's a D minor, isn't it? Well, yes, it is, in another context. But since we're talking about an F chord riff, we'll just call it an F6. Or an F add 6. So you play it in the same way as the other chord riffs. So you add the sixth note on beats 2 and 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. You could also add the seventh note like we've done with the other chord riffs by putting your pinky on the third fret of the third string. So we've covered the C, we've covered the F, and the third chord in the key of C is a G. Okay? And we've already covered the G chord riff in the first video. So you're not on the G chord for very long when you're playing in the key of C. Just one bar in the middle of the song, and then if you do the turnaround at the end, maybe. Okay, so that's the basic song really. Now, one thing you may also have noticed is that in the chorus of the song I didn't just play a standard C chord riff. I did that. Now what I'm doing there is playing this chord. I've got my first finger on the third fret of the first string, my third finger on the fifth fret of the second string, and my second finger on the fourth fret of the third string. Now that is a kind of C6 inversion. Remember we looked at it just now. But I'm playing it by just putting my finger there, my first finger there. Now you can also play a C6 like that, of course. But I like the way it's got a slightly higher pitch there with the C note there on the first string. It also means that I can play it slightly more rhythmically perhaps by stopping the strings, by lifting my fingers off. So making the rhythm by pressing down on the strings really. Like that. Okay? Now I did something similar on the F chord in the chorus as well. So as well as playing the F chord riff, I did that. Now that is an F9. Now if you're not so well practiced at barring chords, you might find that one a little challenging, but have a go. What I'm doing is I'm barring the first, the second and the third string on the third fret and putting my first finger on the second fret on the fourth string. Like that. Adding these chords makes the song sound a little more jazzy or a little bluesier. So I went like that. Okay? So the chorus went like this. Shake, rattle, roll. Shake, rattle, roll. Shake, rattle, roll. Shake, rattle, roll. Well, you never do nothing to save your doggone soul. Okay, and at the end I did one of those little outros. So this is very similar to the one I described in the second video for the key of G. I'm doing the same sort of thing. So I'll start off on a C, C7, F, F minor, so you get that kind of descending note. So what I'm doing there, after the F minor, I'm playing a G and lifting my first finger off so that the first string is now open, and putting it back on and playing a C. So I go C, C7, F, F minor, G, C. I think that's called a G2 or a G suspended second or something. Okay, faster it sounds like this. And I ended on a C6, this time open. Okay, so I'll count you in so you can have a go at playing that outro along with me. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. And again. 1, 2, 3, 4. And again. And again. And that's how to play rock and roll in the key of C, using a C 12-bar blues. I hope that was clear and useful.